All right. We are going to be going here in just a moment. All right. Okay, let's get this thing going. Can everyone hear me? Hopefully, y'all can. All right, cool. I'm going to kick this thing off officially then with a little intro, and I'm going to start recording. Give me one moment. Hello and welcome to LionWing Talks, a show where I discuss all things LionWing, tabletop games, Japanese games, and localization. I'm your host, Bradley Hailstorm, founder and president of LionWing Publishing. This is episode 39 of the LionWing Talk Show. It's August 28th, 2025. Boy, has it been a while since I've been on one of these. So why am I here? It's got to be a special occasion. I really only break these things out for those these days. What is the special occasion, you ask? Wares Blades on Kickstarter. That's a special occasion, and we're doing an AMA for it tonight. So, tonight I'm going to be mostly talking about Wares Blade. That is the purpose of this. Of course, I'm going to be answering questions about all things LionWing. So, if you are joining us live, hey, thanks for doing so. If you want to ask me a question, you should do that. You can drop it in the chat here on YouTube. I will be pulling up the Discord every once in a while. If you put it in the Wares Blade chat there, that'd be fine too. Lots to go over tonight without even knowing if I've gotten any questions yet. Haven't really looked at the chat, except to confirm that I can be heard, and I can be. So I'm coming into this thing blind, which if you've watched this show before, you know that that's what I prefer. I prefer not to do any notes. I prefer not to look at anything before I go live, because I like to answer things spontaneously and without rehearsing anything. That way you know you're getting the authentic Bradley. So, yeah, been a minute. Wares Blade launched on Kickstarter just a couple days ago, 2 days ago. In fact, it is our most successful Kickstarter to date, which is awesome. And we still have 20 days to go through this thing. So certainly we've never had a Kickstarter blow up quite like this before. We've had successful Kickstarters in the past, but nothing that really resembles this, which is just fantastic. Wares Blade was a bit of a, kind of like a leap of faith, hoping that people were into retro Japanese RPGs, and just sort of crossed my fingers and pressed the go live button on that Kickstarter. And Then we went live and we funded in 9 minutes. I'm going to talk about how that launch did not go as intended here tonight. No one knows that story yet, so I'll be sharing that for the first time. That'll be fun to hear about, I'm sure. Painful for me to recount, but maybe interesting for you all to listen to. So I'm going to jump into these questions, if you don't mind. I've got a little beverage with me. Take a little drink of that now and then. You know, a little glugging from a can. Great audio, right? But nevertheless, gotta have a little liquid encouragement for these AMAs. Okay, getting to it. My first question is I'd like to ask thus far, what does the original design team in Japan think about your localization efforts? Good question. So we work closely with every Japanese team on every project that we do. It sort of has to happen, right? Like you can't not involve the original design team. This one was very different, however, because the coordination on the project started really, really early, actually before any of the localization and development began. We were having to kind of plan things out far in advance before we got going, because if not, then this thing was certainly going to be a mess. This is a very intricate project. It's got a lot of moving parts. It's a super thick book, and it is super old. And so there was a lot to ask questions about and to get a context for. And so we have been in contact with the Japanese team, not only earlier than all of our previous projects, earlier in development, I mean, but more consistently, more regularly. There's just a lot more back and forth that's happening here. Yes, part of that is the project requires it. Another part of it is the guys at Shindosha are just like super accessible and very, very communicative. Probably one of, if not the most communicative Japanese teams that we've worked with. All of our designers have been awesome to work with. Super great folks. Also very communicative, very cooperative. They've all been fantastic. This has just been, kind of like the next step up. They really are professionals, and they've wanted this project to succeed since day one, since I pitched it to them. And because of that, they have been heavily involved along the way. And so we do have a private Discord chat with them. There's a couple folks from their team along with the entire localization team. And that way we can ask questions in real time. In the past, we've done that before, but normally we haven't had a direct line like a Discord channel to the designers. And so this one's different because the communication, there isn't as much of a lapse. And it seems like the Shindosha guys are like always online. I can message them at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. and somehow I get a response within minutes. And so the communication has just been a lot easier because it is happening in real time. We're not working on a lag. We're not going through email. And it's not the localization team talking to me, who I then am conveying their questions to our translator, who then is emailing the folks, waiting for their response, translating the message back to me, and then me conveying it back to the localization team. That's how it's happened in many past projects, and that's just not the case here. Everyone has immediate access. The people who need the questions answered are getting answers to their questions directly. And so it's been great. They've been fantastic and super enthusiastic about this entire project. Wares Blade obviously is near and dear to their heart. Wares Blade has been popular in Japan for coming up on 4 decades now. Next year is the 40th anniversary. And so when I reached out to Shindosha about this project, I did not even put 2 and 2 together that we were coming up on the 40th anniversary. Like nowhere in my mind was I thinking of that. Nowhere did I notice that. I just reached out on my own timeline because it made sense for my timeline. And then as we started talking more and we started talking more project specifics, they said, it would be really great if this could be even loosely connected to our 40-year anniversary plans. And so that was just kind of like a cool little cherry on top moment for everyone, quite frankly. And I think the English version of Wares Blade, and of course the Kickstarter, has done a lot to kind of put Wares Blade back in the spotlight a little bit, even in Japan, because while it's been a popular thing and there have been various releases from the Wares IP all these years, this has just, I think, garnered a little extra attention just because you have a larger stage. It's the international stage, right? Right now. And so that's brought more eyes, that's brought more conversation. We're seeing a lot of even Japanese players jumping in, backing the project, talking about it online in various spots. And so it really has worked out quite well. Thank you for that question. Let's see. What are their thoughts about the current success of the Kickstarter to bring the game to English-speaking audiences? I mean, very excited. We messaged with them launch day, shortly after we funded, just to say like, hey, I don't know if you saw. And so they are very excited. Also, these guys are pros. And so, for them, Shindosha is a very successful company. Wares Blade is a successful IP, and then all the other things that Shindosha does is very successful. You're not a company that sticks around, for almost half a century because you don't do good work, right? And so they're good at what they do. In some cases, they've been very excited, and also, I can tell it's a little different for me and them because I think they're like, hey, this is awesome. We've been here before. We've seen success. We love this. And I'm like, hey, this is big success. So, but they've been very happy, very pleased with how things have been going. And quite frankly, development has been smooth all along. And I think that's also, just increased trust, which has allowed them to let their guard down of like, hey, this IP is in good hands. And I think with the guard being let down, they can just sort of enjoy the ride a little bit. I'm speaking a little bit for them in that regard, and I'm making some assumptions there because they haven't said any of those words directly to me. But I've been doing this now for so long. I've worked with so many different designers. You kind of get a feel for what each designer or design team is kind of feeling in relation to the English release, and that's the vibe that I'm getting right now. So yeah, it's been a really great experience all around. Someone said that's some good music. Yes, that is from one of our soundtracks from Kratia Wild Hunt Festival, a board game that we launched in 2021. And then, hey, we launched an anniversary edition and 2 expansions earlier this summer to it on Kickstarter. So that's where that music came from. Next question. Do you have plans to localize any of the other Wares Blade materials, such as expansion source books or novels? Yes, I would absolutely love to. I think for me, I wasn't even thinking about that a whole lot until we got a little closer to the Kickstarter. Quite frankly, I did not want to be distracted in trying to plan out this huge project roadmap with all these sprawling parts, moving parts, different releases, because I was just afraid, especially with how meaningful this IP is. Frankly, I didn't want to fuck it up. So I really just wanted to focus on Wares Blade, the core rulebook, and making sure that we got that thing ready in the best shape that it possibly could be in for the Kickstarter before I even started to think like, okay, I can pull a little bit of my attention away to what ifs. The what if scenarios kind of came into my mind a little bit later in development once I felt like we had a good handle on things and it was smooth sailing in development. We had a good system down and everyone kind of knew what they were doing. So, I never want to put the cart before the horse either. Like right now, the Kickstarter is all that matters. The core rulebook, all that matters. That's my sole focus. And it will be my sole focus because I want to get this right. I was also kind of just holding in reserve, even though as we got a little bit closer to the Kickstarter, I began to think about those what if scenarios. What if we did the novels? What if we did some supplements? What if we did more with the IP? And, we talked with the Shindosha guys and they allowed us to do that. What if? I was still just not wanting to think much further about like, okay, what would that really look like? But I was also holding in reserve of like, let's also see how this Kickstarter goes. Like, I think this is a really awesome project and I've got a pretty good picker, right? I've got a pretty good track record with picking games that work and are successful. But this was just so vastly different from anything that we'd ever done that I was like, I really need to just like, I'm going to put the what ifs on hold for a moment I'm going to see how the Kickstarter goes. I'm at least going to see how the Kickstarter launch goes before thinking about anything other than what's right in front of me. And then, of course, the launch happens and we fund in 9 minutes and then we hit, 100K in 24 hours. And I'm like, yeah, clearly people like this. They get it. They get what we're trying to do with this and they want it. What has kind of taken me by surprise is the amount of enthusiasm for the project. I figured if people were going to like it, they were going to like it, right? But outside of, Shin Megami, Tokyo Conception, we haven't had a level of excitement like this before. And so that's been interesting just to sort of observe and to kind of sit with to figure out, okay, well, what does this mean? Like, not only do people want this, but we've had plenty of people who've wanted our Kickstarters. But like, it seems like folks want this even more than what we're used to. And then the comments came, both on the campaign page, in direct messages on Kickstarter, in the Discord as you've seen them, on X. And those comments were, hey, would you ever do the novels? Hey, are you going to do any supplements? Hey, you going to do any expansions? And, seeing that, I'm excited. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like, people are not only supporting this, they're not only supporting this Kickstarter, this book, they want to support something larger. And that's awesome. If you've been following LionWing for any length of time, especially since probably 2021, I've talked about like the need for a small to mid-size publisher to have evergreen products. It's one of the ways that you can create sustainability in an industry that has no sustainability, quite frankly, especially for the small and medium-sized folks. Like, sustainability is really hard to achieve. One of the ways that I determined that I could achieve that, at least for LionWing, it's probably different for other people, but this is what it works for. This is what it is for me, is let's find evergreen products. Let's find things that people are so into that they want to keep revisiting, because then we can work more in that world, that universe. We can drill down into those franchises, and we can produce more content in a style that we're already familiar with, in a style that we already know, and a style that we're already good at delivering on. And so seeing people talk about more Wares Blade products immediately kind of like, tickles that part of my mind of like, oh, evergreen. So do we have any plans to localize those things? Not right now. Again, the Kickstarter is what's in front of me, but I will say this. Like, the Kickstarter has shown me that there's definitely an interest out there. People are interested in this world. The one thing that you always have to consider, and this doesn't always happen on like the consumer side of things. And hey, outside of LionWing, I'm a consumer, right? So like, I know what this is like. It's easy for me as like a customer of a product to get really excited about that product, see that it's, having success, and say like, oh, I hope they do more with this. Oh, why won't they do more with this? When you're on the other end of things, it's like, hey, you can have a really successful thing, but every time you iterate on that thing, the audience who shows up for that thing gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Of course, there are always edge cases. There are always outliers and exceptions to the rule. There are plenty of IP and product out there where the second release is bigger than a first, right? Like, that's absolutely a thing. It's just not typically what happens. So I have to weigh that against like, okay, we got this really hot product right now. Wares Blade's really awesome. If we revisit it with, more of the genre, more of the medium that we're working with right now in RPGs, will people show up for it? Enough people show up for it, I should say. And then when you start talking about like connected content, when you're talking about like what I would consider like shoulder content to the RPG books, in this case, novels, then it's like, okay, so you're now taking an audience of still a fairly niche thing, and then you're asking that audience who showed up for a game to then read a book after the excitement has already died down about the initial thing. And the people that make that conversion from like main thing that I like to shoulder content thing connected to the thing that I like is relatively small. I shared this stat one time on one of these shows, actually, when I was talking about doing supplements for old books. And, the first supplement of a book, always outliers, right? So that's a little asterisk. Most of the time, however, a supplement to a book does about 30 to 40%, usually a lot closer to 30 than 40 of the original audience. 30% of the original audience will show up for a supplement, and then each subsequent supplement after that drops anywhere in the ballpark of 2 to 10%. So by the time you get to a fourth supplement, especially of a niche product, who's left, right? So as a small business, you always have to kind of you have to constantly weigh these things. It's never fun to weigh these things. Like, I just want to I'd love to just dig in deep and do more Wares Blade. But when you are a small publisher and you got to think about cash flow and all that stuff, and you got capital tied up with other projects, and you're figuring out, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to pay these people? I still have this thing to do over here. And then I've got all these other products that still need my attention, which costs money. It costs human resources, capital resources, and there's only so much money to go around, right? And so you have to make very intentional decisions with that money. And, intentionality when it comes to looking at supplemental content, you've got to really determine, is the juice worth the squeeze? So that's a long-winded answer. Let's see here. Let's get to Luke here. Luke, so you've backed so many of our Kickstarters, and you had backed Wares Blade, but then you didn't. I'm very curious about what happened there. Only because I see you all the time in the other comment sections of our other projects. Let's see here. You have got a question. Does the layout of the sample PDF reflect what we can expect in the rulebook? Yeah, in broad strokes, yes. Like the aesthetic of what you're seeing, yes. The aesthetic is not set in stone. Nothing is set in stone until it goes to print, let me tell you. But we like the aesthetic as it is right now. Will the layout change? Possibly. So what you guys are looking at is not actually the sample. It's not a vertical slice of the actual book. The sample is a bunch of different parts of the book cobbled together into 40 some pages. And so it's all these disparate parts that would never actually go next to one another in the book itself, just slapdash together, to give folks a taste of each, not each, because we don't even get into all the chapters and sections of the book, but at least, taste of the major parts of the book. And so what you actually see in terms of a static layout of oh, well, will page 4 look like that? No, page 4 will not look like page 4 in the sample. Even the parts that we pulled from various, the first chapter in the sample rulebook isn't even how the first chapter is outlined in the actual rulebook. Even chapter 1 is a slapdash together chapter 1. So everything has just been cut up, pasted together, and thus you get the sample. But it was the only way that we could really do it because the game is very dense, right? And so how do you show off a 350 page book that is primarily 350 pages of edge to edge text? This isn't it's 350 pages similar to Tokyo Conception, but 100 of Tokyo Conception's pages is a demon compendium. And so it's not actually 350 pages. This is 350 pages of just text and text and text. Now there's lots of illustrations. We had lots of great artwork to work with. There's plenty of that going on. However, it's a super dense book, lots of text going on. And so to try to break that all down into a very condensed sample was super hard. And, we did the best we could with putting that stuff together and then making it actually making it readable, aesthetically readable, visually readable, and then also mechanically it had to make sense too. So it very much so is a hard sample of the book. Okay, next. Any chance you guys bring out any Wares Blade miniatures or statues or any of the other side games like Legion or Mage Dice? This kind of goes back to the other question of the Wares Blade sandbox is bigger than people realize. There's so much more to it than RPG books. And even when in the trailer, we kind of flip through all these impressive stats about the 96 novels and 6 audio dramas and 2 video games and, 3 settings books and 19 RPG books. there's even more to it than just those stats. Yes, there are miniatures. There's more to this line that people don't know about, generally because people in the West don't know about Wares Blade at large. I would love to do more things with this. Maybe it's the novels, maybe it's a supplement, maybe it's miniatures. The only thing that scares me about miniatures is like they're really hard to get right. And especially because we're not a miniatures company. So like our first time doing miniatures would be with Wares Blade. And I don't really love how that outcome could play out. I would much have rather preferred our first time with miniatures been with a not Wares Blade, you know, something smaller, where we could have cut our teeth on that so that we could have come into something like this ready to go and knowing exactly what to do and what not to do to produce a good product. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer exactly is there yet, but I selfishly want to do more with this world. And as you know, sometimes when it comes to LionWing, I just make decisions based on like my own desires and not is it going to make financial sense for me. In fact, I would say most of this company's lifespan has just been me localizing and publishing books that I want to play and just hoping that there's an audience for it. So let's see here. The art's beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about the process of taking the original art so that it can be included in the new books? Yes, I can, right after I take a drink of this drink. All right, the whistle has been wetted. So there are no digital files for this book. None. So Tokyo Conception, it's an old book, 20 plus years old. There were digital files though, because people were doing digital art in the early 2000s, the early to mid 2000s, right? Not so much the case in the 80s and early to mid 90s, and certainly wasn't the case here. So we had no access to like any file that you go and you click on and it opens up in Illustrator or some kind of Adobe Suite software, and boom, there it is, and we can mess with it. No, everything that you're seeing right now is from high resolution scans, all from Shindosha. So obviously Shindosha is a professional company. They do so much in the creative world. Naturally, they would have access to the highest fidelity and, quite frankly, the most expensive scanners that the world has to offer. And before we even started on this project, and this is the case with all other books that will come after Wares Blade attached to the Legends of Japan product line, we looked at, okay, let's see what the scan data looks like. Let's see what the scanned illustration looks like. Can we work with this? Because at the end of the day, if the scans, you know, if they don't look good, then we can't do anything with this. And it won't be the same if I publish a book from 1994, but then I have art that's made in 2025. Like, artists can't go back and illustrate the way they did 30 years ago because they've iterated upon that style. It's no longer possible to do that. They can mimic what they used to do, but you can never get back to the real-time skill work of that art. It's lost to time. That's just the way it is. I wish it wasn't, but it is. So like, commissioning new art was never going to be a thing that I was going to do. It wouldn't be the essence of what I'm trying to do with the Legends Japan line. I'm trying to preserve history. Part of me is a historian and all of this stuff. I love history and I love preservation. And if I had to produce new art for it, that's not preserving anything. So I would not have been interested in doing Wares Blade if that were the case. Of course, Shindosha comes back and they're like, hey, what do you think of these? Send me some of the scans. And I'm like, oh yes, I think we can work with this. I send it to the graphic designer, Win, and she's like, this is as high fidelity as you can get. This is what you would get out of a digital file anyway. So like, this totally works. So what's funny is like the cover that you see in the book, it looks like we probably pulled that out of some kind of Illustrator file of some kind. Nope, that's a scan. that's a scan of the artwork. You never know. All the art that you see inside the book, scans. So for us, that was the best case scenario. We get to keep all the art. We get to keep the original essence of the book intact, and we don't have to then, bastardize this project by having to commission new art. Now, it did look like, up until I think literally this morning, it did look like I was going to have the map of a Han, of Western Han, re-illustrated, which I was super bummed about. But at the same time, I'm like, people got to have a map, you know, and like we didn't have any files other than this one file of an untranslated map, and it wasn't a super great map, quite frankly. Like the scan wasn't great, the map wasn't exactly what we were looking for anyway. It was kind of all of a Han, and that's not what we needed, because this map came from not one of the RPG books, to my knowledge. I think it came from like some kind of guide. I don't know. It may have even been like an art guide. And I just was like, I was bummed, but like, I thought like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to have to do. And then, and I was even talking about that in the Discord as of just 2 days ago. And then literally this morning, I'm talking to Shindosha, and they're like, basically, check this out, send it to me. It's the map. It's the map. It's the map that we had seen in the books that we thought we didn't have access to any longer. Better yet, it had English text on it. So I'm like, first off, dodge a bullet there, because I don't have to commission anything. And that goes back to what I was talking about before, that little rant. And also, this thing is beautiful. So it really worked out. So the process of taking that art was really just taking those scan files and then clipping them. And that's where our graphic designer did her, worked her magic. Shindosha just gave us like the raw scan data, and then it was up to us to go in there and figure out how we're going to cut the stuff out. So as you can imagine, if we're working with scan data, that means that like we don't just have illustrations of Ryude against a plain transparent backdrop. Most of what you're seeing in that book, we had to actually go and we had to sort of like cut out of various different books where there were backgrounds behind those things. Sometimes it was text behind them. And, you know, obviously everything's merged down and it's all a scan. So it's not like you got layers to work with. And so the reason that the art looks as good as it looks is twofold. One is Shindosha and their amazing scanner and their technique to get those scans right. Two, Winona, our graphic designer, is a wizard and was able to take that scan data and make it presentable for the English language release, for the formatting, for the layout, all that good stuff. So that's kind of how that worked. Let's see here. Next question. Oh, a lot more questions than I was anticipating. Sorry. Will the rules have any quality of life updates, or are they going to remain entirely unchanged and faithful to the original printing? So the original... Okay, let me back up. Sorry about that snot sniff there. I'm a little sick. Running joke, I'm always sick when we launch a Kickstarter. I'm not kidding. Go back and look at any of like these videos that I've done around the launch of one of our projects, and I'm always sick. It's ridiculous. The universe hates me. So, a conversation we had early on with Shindosha was, do we update anything here? You know, like any design team can critique their own work. Like, in fact, probably every designer should do a post-mortem on their own shit, you know, to figure out like, hey, what worked, what didn't work. When we return to this thing, how do we make it better, right? So I think post-mortems are super important. And so, of course, they had done that. You know, there were things that they would have liked to have changed. We talked about it early days. We talked about, do we do updates here? And initially we were going to do a couple quality of life things, like mechanically, and then we just decided, nope, that's not this project. The minute we start doing that, we're doing something different. And like, I don't want to do that thing. Someone else might want to, but it's not going to be me. I want to preserve it as it is. So any of the quality of life QOL changes that we've done have been purely aesthetically, in terms of how do we present the information. Is the information presented in the best way? How do we emphasize or feature information on this page where it maybe wasn't featured in the, on that page in the original Japanese? Like, oh, okay, well, maybe we're going to do a pop-out box here. Like, no, the page 8 of the Japanese renewal book doesn't have a pop-out box here. but we're going to add a pop-up box to this page because we want to highlight for players this particular part because we know it's important. So those are the only types of changes we've made, and I don't think I would even consider those changes, quite frankly. We have made headers bigger in places where we felt they should have been bigger. We've bolded things that weren't bolded, so it's like stuff like that are updates. So it's like the barest of the bare quality of life, like definition, but that's kind of exactly what I wanted. So that's what you can expect there. By and large, this is an unchanged and damn near 100% faithful recreation of the original 94 release. Let's see here. Luke, you got another good question. I like this one. Can you give a history of Wares Blade editions, releases, etc. over time in Japan? What's some of the differences from 88 to 94 editions? Yes, I would do that in just a second. Going to wet the old whistle one more time. All right, so I want to pull something up here. I did an interview with Mildra, Gaming Monk, a couple days ago where we talked about this. But I honestly wanted the forum to be able to talk about it again. And Luke, your question has given me that opportunity. So a lot of people are finding out about Wares Blade for the first time this week, and there'll continue to be people who find out about it for the first time over the next 20 days, or the next 3 weeks or so, which is great. Which also means, however, that people are going to do research. They're going to want to try to learn more about it. There's not a lot of information out there. There are some hardcore historians who have dedicated blogs and various in-depth articles kind of detailing more about Wares Blade. These are mostly like Japanese TTRPG historians, those types. So that information is out there. I love the fact that some folks have been following this project since its initial release and have been writing about it, for years online, which is cool. But I figured, you know what, there's probably going to come a time when we need to collate that information and like give it to people in a digestible way. Luke, your question allows me to do a little bit of that, quite frankly. So Wares Blade is, it's a spinoff. It did not start off as a TTRPG. I think many people think it did, but it didn't. The first RPG release was in 1989, which is why, if you look at the counter on our trailer, it starts from 1986 and goes up to 2025, and that's because the IP of Wares Blade started 3 years prior to the RPG actually ever coming to fruition and being released. So Wares Blade is a spinoff of the larger franchise called Wares 1092, which made its debut in the mid to late 80s and kind of spawned what we see today as Wares Blade. It spawned books, video games, audio dramas, model kits, the miniatures game that someone mentioned before in the chat. So although Wares Blade is new to us here in the West right now, obviously not new in Japan. The franchise was created by Shindosha, and I don't know if people know about Shindosha. I didn't know a ton about them prior to working with them on this project, but they've been around a long time. Their main business, though, was providing creative support to like major companies and working on big franchises. Gundam and Mobile Suit Gundam and Transformers are two of the biggest ones that they worked on. So they're the studio that developed it. They're still around. They're who I'm talking to. So, they've been around for a while. In 1986, Shindosha produced what's basically like a novella or a 6-part story in a fiction magazine called Shishio, which featured, sort of like the basis for Wares Blade, a wandering mech riding warrior battling his way through a fantasy world. The 6-part, mini story turned out so well that Shindosha said, I think there's probably legs to this concept. Maybe we should do something more with this. And so that's when the company decided to do something more with it, and their first product was going to be a full-fledged novel. So they did the 6-part novella in the magazine, and then decided, hey, if we're going to like take this thing to the next level, the next logical step for us, the less risky step for us, that also is the most logical one, is just a full-fledged novel. Let's take the novella and let's turn it into something bigger. So that was in '86, and so the book was written by a guy named Satoshi Chiba. What's interesting is at the time, Chiba was playing D&D, playing a lot of D&D, holding regular D&D sessions with his colleagues. And so it didn't take long, because this was all kind of happening concurrently. It didn't take long for the D&D group to say like, hey, you know that six-part story and that novel that we're thinking about doing something with? Like, I wonder if we could turn that into an RPG. So the idea eventually solidified into like a formal project with two members of Chiba's D&D group primarily working on it. Masatoshi Kasakabe, who was a Shindosha employee, and then Tomiyuki Matsumoto, which was coincidentally enough the group's DM. So they were the ones who were kind of leading the charge on the RPG front. So what was effectively happening is the novel, the full-fledged novel from Chiba, and the game were being written at the same time. The team was afraid that if they were writing these two things, designing a game and writing a book at the same time, they were bound to screw up something continuity-wise with the lore. And something that happened in the book was going to conflict with something that was going to be in the setting of the RPG and vice versa. So they decided, well, how do we make sure that doesn't happen? Yeah, we can keep doing this thing and we can be like in close communication, but let's be honest, something's going to happen and something's going to go awry. We're going to miss something. Something's going to, conflict. That's not going to be good. That's when they decided, okay, the RPG is going to be a prequel to the novel. It's going to be set 250 years before the novel. And so, the end result ultimately was Wares Blade, which was first published in 1989, not even as a single book, as a box set. So in fact, the collector's box set that you see on the Kickstarter page is the same box set art, same box set format, same box set colors, the same exact box set design as the Japanese original 1989 Wares Blade release. One moment. So in the box set, like I said, there was no big book. It was actually 3 separate books, and I'd have to grab it from my shelf. But it basically was like a settings guide, a player's guide, and then a GM guide. 3 small books put together. I want to say there were some like fold-up standees, if memory serves. Yeah, fold-up standee, and there was a map, if I'm thinking right. So that was the first installment. That was the first release. Interesting that like the first ever release and the only release for a while was a box set and not even like a core rulebook. So, things were done differently in '89. From '89 to '94, various supplements and settings guides, expansions, if you will, were released. But quite frankly, by the early to mid 90s, Wares Blade had kind of churned out a lot of its content already. And there was a time when kind of things went dormant. Also, what was happening in the 90s is the Japanese RPG boom was dying. So first, let me just say, like, there was never a huge Japanese RPG boom. There was a Japanese RPG boom for sure. Don't get that wrong. But we're not talking about like the RPG boom that we're experiencing right now or anything. Nevertheless, the boom was in the 80s that led a little bit into the 90s. By the mid-ish 90s, RPGs were kind of not very popular, kind of dying out a little bit. I don't want to say dying out. They weren't dying out. It's not like people weren't producing them. They just weren't very popular. And so not as many were being produced, not as many people were playing the games, which means not as many people were buying new games, which means people stopped producing as many RPGs. However, Wares Blade was still a thing. Like, even though they had kind of run through a lot of supplements and expansions and whatnot, it was still a thing. And that's where the 1994 renewal book came in. So the renewal book, which was released in 94, which is what our release is based on, was meant to kind of be a reset for the franchise that was going to carry it forward for the next couple of years. The renewal book, which the book we're all getting now, is basically a definitive edition of that original 1989 set. It's all their errata, rules clarifications, and kind of like mechanical updates and that kind of thing, all rolled into one book. So the renewal book was supposed to kind of take Wares Blade into the next part of its life. And then by the mid to late, let's call it 94 to 98, 99, then RPGs were like very much so on life support. The planned arc for like the second, the reset and the second life of Wares Blade the RPG never really came to fruition. So the renewal book hit, and that was it. Another Wares Blade RPG book was not released until 2008. Think about that. So that's what, 14 years later. It's such a bummer when you look at it in retrospect. Like, they had all these plans for things to pop off with the renewal, like there was this whole story arc, essentially, not a literal one, but a figurative story arc for Wares Blade of like, hey, it's going to have this second chapter in its life. And then that didn't happen. No one showed up essentially for it. No one was showing up for RPGs at all. It wasn't Wares Blade's fault. It's just the time and place, So Wares Blade, the IP, went dormant until 2008. Then a publisher by the name of Hobby Japan they wanted to give Wares Blade sort of a chapter 3 in its life. And that's when they produced the D20 version of Wares Blade. Now, the D20 version of Wares Blade, which was, again, produced by Hobby Japan and released in 2008, was it was based on D&D 3rd edition. And so you actually couldn't even buy the D20 version of Wares Blade, buy the book, and just play it with that book. You had to have the player's handbook of D&D 3rd edition to play it. The only problem is 2008, RPGs were still dead in Japan, and certainly D&D was dead in Japan, and no one was buying 3rd edition. Not to mention, if we're keeping our timelines right here, 2008, D&D 4th edition is releasing in the West. So they're releasing, a book for a system that is very outdated at that point. And yes, there are still people playing old versions, old editions of D&D, and there always have been. When people were playing 3rd, they were playing 2nd. When 4th came out, people were playing 3rd, 3.5, all that good stuff. That's beside the point. The point is they released this game for a franchise that had been dormant for a really long time, built upon a system that no one was playing. And so that was it. And that was the end of, Wares Blade's RPG life, effectively, until now. So that's a little bit about the history. Hopefully that wasn't too long. Hopefully I didn't lose anyone or bore anyone to death with that. But I figured, if Luke's asking about it, other people are asking about it, and they probably want to hear the history too. Hopefully I did a decent job about explaining the arc there. I'm sure someone else who's a better historian than I am can come in and fill in some blanks, but that is the gist of it. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just catching up. I'm like way behind on the chat here. Sorry, guys. Can we see a close-up of the dice? Yes, Silk Burrito. So someone asked that. I don't know if it was you. Someone asked that today on in the comments section. And yes, I'm going to show off a close-up render of the dice in one of the upcoming updates. I don't know if it'll be in the next one, but it'll probably be in the one after that. So I've already got the next one mostly written, and I don't want to just like shoehorn something in there. But, I'm releasing the updates pretty quickly, so it won't be too long before we get to update 4, which is the one that I hope to put the dice in, because we're coming up on update 3, if that's right. I've done 2. Yes. So, yes, absolutely. So, Burrito, that's the short answer. Yes. Will there be any material beyond the sample PDF that could support a one-shot? We got something planned. We will probably be announcing that, introducing that next week. We're doing something this weekend in preparation for something. A little surprise for folks. So I'm going to earmark your question, and you should earmark your own question for right now, because we're going to come back to it. Not in this show, but next week. I just saw on the Kickstarter page that the campaign exceeded 120. Oh, hey, really? I haven't looked at the campaign page since probably about 2 hours ago. Last I saw it was like 118. That's awesome. After the map, are there other stretch goals you have in mind is the question. Absolutely, Baron. We've got plenty more planned. I will try to put that up tonight. I'm really trying to keep up with the map in real time. It's just, it's a little hard. But yes, the answer is there's more stretch goals to come. Scans look crazy good, right? Right? It's freaking phenomenal, right? Let's see here. What's the rough timeline from reaching out to them to the Kickstarter launching? Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so I think this project, I think first conversation started. Now, time kind of like doesn't mean anything anymore to my brain for whatever reason. 2020 like broke my time meter. And everything I just assume happened a year ago. But I think first conversations with Shindosha happened in late 2023. Wait, no, we announced it in No, so this would have been early 2023. Probably 2 years ago. 2 years ago. I'd say it's about 2 years ago, maybe a little closer to 2.5 years ago. Normally a project doesn't take that long to like get to market, or in this case, get to Kickstarter. But as you can imagine, like there were so many variables that like had to be accounted for here that we never had to deal with, that Shindosha never had to deal with, really, that no one has ever had to deal with, because no one's done this before. I know someone on one of our other Kickstarter or one of our other YouTube said like, yeah, people have released Japanese RPGs before, and I'm like, yeah, no, I get that. Trust me, I'm one of the guys who's released 6. I just meant no one's gone into the back catalog of Japanese RPGs and released one that came out 35 years ago. So as you can imagine, for something that old, there's just a lot of coordination, a lot of early emails basically left off on like, well, let me see what I can do. That was them saying like, well, let me see what I can do with these scans. Or it was me saying like, well, let me see what I can do with this thing over here. And so it just way more coordination went into this one. And that's why I think it took so long. I really appreciate you and your team's integrity in this localization. Can't wait. Thank you. Appreciate that. Always nice to hear kind words. I'm late, so I'm sorry if it's been asked, but will we get character creation or combat demonstration? So if who asked that? Ty Brute? Yes, there is a damn near 5-hour actual play session in which all of that is gone over. Or I think maybe not character creation, because I don't think character creation was gone over at the time, but you can get a demonstration of much of the game in that single 5-hour session. Jake actually beat me to it here, that we do have plans to produce a video about character creation specifically. So lots is happening behind the scenes with the team and trying to produce new content and figure out, hey, what would be helpful for people to see? What do people want to see? How can we give them what they want to see? And so that's something that we're working on. I guess I will add combat demonstrator to the list of the video ideas. I think we could probably release just like, really, I'm thinking about this in real time. This is why I sound kind of fractured in my thinking here. We could probably release a video on all of the major systems in the game, and that's probably a good idea to do anyway. Let's see here. Yeah, someone said we'll probably do... Oh, that's Ferd. We'll do another vid on combat because casters are a little odd and need their own section. Yeah, casters in this game just, pretty complex classes. Can you explain a bit more about the cultural impact of Wares Blade in Japan? Immediately, I think many looked at this and thought of Escaflowne and other anime. Was Wares an influence? I'll answer that in one moment. So yeah, I think Wares Blade certainly had an impact. It had a cultural impact. You're not allowed... you're not a franchise that lasts 40 years without having some kind of impact, right? How is that impact measured? I don't know exactly. I mean, certainly Wares Blade was inspired by other things before it. Wares Blade specifically, as you can imagine, inspired by Mobile Suit Gundam, inspired by D&D, inspired by Dragon Quest, are those being a couple things right there. There were some anime series that also inspired Wares Blade, Ara Battler Dunbine being one of them that comes to mind. But in terms of what Wares Blade that inspired, that one's a little harder to track because there's not a lot. I'm sure it's the internet. I'm sure it's out there somewhere in the crevices of some corner that's been explored in like this blog that 10 people have seen or something. Like, so let me just preface it, like maybe it's out there. But that one's a little bit harder to track in terms of like, what did Wares Blade then inspire? Did it have any inspirations on a game that someone has, actually I think a couple people have brought up at this point, Vanguard Bandits, the old Epic Stella, what was it? Epica Stella? Was that it? We called it Vanguard Bandits in the West. Did it have an impact on that game? Maybe, because that game basically is Wares Blade, in terms of setting. But certainly, like in Japan, it's not like Wares Blade it's not Sword World huge. So it didn't have like that kind of impact. I would even say, it wasn't as big as Wizardry, I don't think. And of course, during the time, like in the 80s and early 90s, it probably wasn't as big as, D&D and Tunnels and Trolls and that and all of that. But, I mean, maybe it was fourth or fifth in terms of like popular, impactful RPGs at the time. If we're looking at D&D and other Western properties that were popular at the time, in terms of Japanese properties, yeah, I would say the order in terms of like impact on the industry and on adjacent industries or adjacent media genres, mediums, it probably at Sword World 1, Wizardry 2, Wares Blade 3. And you would think that with that kind of popularity, someone somewhere then made something who loved Wares Blade and played Wares Blade and then found through their design that Wares Blade was coming out in their design. Whether they knew it and called it out specifically, this thing is inspired by Wares Blade, or whether it was an unconscious thing that was driving some of their decisions. I don't know. But certainly it did have an impact. It absolutely had an impact. Okay, I'm behind again. Sorry. Let's see here. Can you explain a bit more? Okay. Any support for character sheets for Roll20? Any live play scheduled so we can get more hype? Well, we had the 1 AP, Jonathan. We do have more videos coming, so there's that. I would like to have Wares Blade have some kind of Roll20. I mean, have some kind of connection, integration. Because this has been our most popular RPG thus far, I mean, barring SMT, but that doesn't count. I mean, Shin Megami is Shin Megami. It's a giant thing. Setting aside Tokyo Conception, this is a big thing, right? And I'd like to be able to make it as accessible and as easy to play as I can. And so does that mean there's something to be done with it in Roll20 or VTT or whatever? Yeah, I'd like to explore that, quite frankly. I had a bunch of questions, but this was so fascinating. I'm just listening. I forgot what I was going to ask. My friend, I do that all the time. I'm loving this history lesson, especially since I wouldn't be able to find this in English elsewhere. Let's see here. Epica Stella was correct. All right, sweet. Yeah, I got that one right. Yeah, what's funny is I own Vanguard Bandits. It's behind the green screen. And in fact, I just grabbed Vagrant Story next to it like a week ago because I was like, I haven't done a Vagrant Story playthrough in like a long ass time. I want to play it. Like going through my shelf, Vagrant Story, right next to Vanguard Bandits, which I think then was next to Xenogears. Anyway, does anybody know if there's like a PDF archive of the older Wares Blade stuff, or if there's an official place to purchase the older versions? Yeah, so they just re-released the digital, like they released all the books. I don't know if they re-released all of them. They re-released a number of them digitally not too long ago. Last year, I want to say, the end of last year even. Oh shit. Bookwalker maybe, Amazon. I don't think I'm making this up. I think this was a real thing that happened. They're out there. So yes, you can go actually purchase those through official channels. And I would encourage you to give that team some love. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm going through here. Hopefully I haven't missed anything yet. Sorry, dead air. Doesn't make for good audio. I'm just trying to catch up here. How do the Ryude appear in the game? Are they magical item or are the PCs assumed to have one? So, not everyone can pilot a Ryude. So there are 4 classes in the game. 3-ish of the classes can pilot a Ryude if they want. I mean, technically all 4 can, but spiritualists are the ones who do not pilot Ryude. So if you're going to be a spiritualist, which are like clerics and monks, if you're going to play one of those, you're probably not going to be inside a Ryude. Ryude are interesting because, you know, they're biomechanical things, right? They've got, you know, living muscle tissue, blood that helps power them. But then also there's clear science behind it. You know, obviously metal, armor, plates, all that good stuff. So it's, I think that's not like terribly uncommon, you know, like a lot of mecha are biomechs essentially. Hell, even our one of our past games, Embryo Machine, was very similar. But, so they are described as being almost sentient. You know, I think the almost sentient part speaks to, I want to read something here. One moment. All right, so more specifically, Ryude are, yeah, they're biomechanical. There's but they combine element, like there's a magical element to them, and are animated via like living muscle tissue and blood. To operate a Ryude, you've got to have a special artifact, though. It's called a mask, which essentially contains the machine's spirit. So when we talk about almost sentience with regards to Ryude, I think this is what you're getting at here is they do have a spirit of some type. In fact, so first-time pilots basically have to bend the Ryude's spirit to their will, or if they're not able to, the Ryude will either not operate properly or it'll try to actively shred the mind of the pilot. So I think that's the sentience part. Have you King Ghidra? Yes, I have. I have played every game that we've published. Kind of part of the scouting process. Do Ryude and human NPCs do combat? The human NPCs thing is throwing me off. I'm sorry. So I think I'm going to answer this in the way that I think what you're asking is. Do Ryude and human NPCs do combat on the same quote field, or is it always Ryude versus Ryude due to a power difference? No, it is not always Ryude versus Ryude. There's ground combat. There's on foot combat. So, in fact, like you don't have to have a Ryude to take down another Ryude. You should. It's the best way to do it. But with some strategy and foreplanning, and the right tools, you can a human can kind of even the odds a little bit. You know, there's for instance, there's various schools of spell casting that have access to like super powerful techniques that can like essentially stop a Ryude in its tracks. So spell casting is one way that you could combat a Ryude as a human, being an on-foot combatant. But there's a small arsenal in the book of like anti-Ryude weapons, poisons and paints that basically blind the Ryude, which obviously you can then take advantage of the Ryude in that compromised situation. So yes, the two things can be in the same combat at the same time on the same field, so to speak. So are humans meaningful in combat against Ryude? Yeah, Jason. I think I answered your question without even looking at your question. Yeah, they can be. You know, it's not easy. You know, maybe many times it's not even advised, but it can happen. You find yourself in the situation. You got the right tools to work with, and the right plan of attack. Yeah, you can do something with that. Okay. I've neglected here. 1 second. Reading through here. Some questions that I've gotten through the Kickstarter. I've gotten a lot of questions about add-ons. So I'm going to go into like Kickstarter page question and answer mode here for a moment. Bear with me. Actually, I'm going to take a drink first. Okay, so add-ons. Oh, you know what? I'll use this time to talk about the crazy behind-the-scenes launch of this game on Tuesday. So right now, yes, there are add-ons that were not add-ons at launch. So right now, add-ons include dice, the GM screen, and the scenario booklet, the physical edition of that. And then you can add on most of our other TTRPGs. If you're finding out about us for the first time through this campaign, you can grab most of our RPGs, with the exception of our most recent Kickstarter RPG, because our contract doesn't allow it to be sold in bundled items with other properties. And obviously you can't grab Shin Megami in this one. So those are the add-ons. They weren't there initially. So the initial so we usually launch around noon on Tuesdays. And for people who are checking this out for the first time, you know, LionWing is not my full-time job. It's my side business. Always has been. I'm a CEO of a behavioral health addiction treatment organization. And Tuesday was like a crazy busy day in the morning at work. Normally, if it's you know, I try to plan my schedule around so I've got time in my work schedule prior to the launch of the Kickstarter, just to make sure everything's how it should be and is ready to go for launch. Tuesday was not that. It was chaos at my day job, and I didn't get in front of my computer from like 8 until 12. And I really wanted to launch as close as I could to 12. Because if you followed any of these things, you know, I always say we're going to launch at 12, and then sometimes it's like 2:15, you know, we're launching. I didn't want to do that again. Really trying to be better about sticking to my timeline. So this was one of those times when I maybe shouldn't have stuck to my timeline. But I went into the Kickstarter page. I did like a very quick once over and just hit that go live button. And there were so many incarnations of the campaign page that you see now, before getting to the one that you see now. I mean, we had changed so many different things, so many different times in terms of like ordering what we wanted to feature on the campaign page itself in terms of graphics and text. And you know what? We need more text here. Oh, we need less text here. Oh, we want to move this image here because it better represents the section under the section that talks about the continent of Ahan. And where do we want to put the download link for the sample? Do we want to put that at the top of the page? Or do we want to show off the artwork before then? And where do we put the actual play video? It's all these things, right? We're constantly moving things around, and we're constantly moving around. Okay, what items are we going to offer? What are our add-ons going to be? What are we going to bundle together? What's going to be the price of these things? Is this thing going to be a limited quantity? Is it not? One day it is a limited quantity. The next day it's not. The next day it's back to a limited quantity. The next week it's back to not a limited quantity. Anyway, these are just things that happen when you run a Kickstarter, and they certainly happened here, and they especially happened here because it was such a bigger project. So big, so many people involved in this one. Normally our teams are like 3 people big. This one's like 10, which I guess 10 people doesn't really sound like a lot, but in the RPG space, it's not a bad sized team. Anyway, so I did a quick once over, and I was like, yeah, it's all there. I hit that live button. Boom, we're live. I go through it. I'm like, oh boy. I didn't proof these sidebars, did I? So, the sidebar rewards, the actual thing where like, on the side of the campaign page lists all the things in a tier, in a pledge tier. That's where you pick, that's where you pick your pledge. Once a project is live, none of that stuff can be edited. You can't change the title of something. You can't change the text in something. If there's a typo in there, you're fucked. It's just the way it is. You got to live with that forever. And it's that way for a reason, and for a good reason. This was one of those times when I hated that reason, and off we went. And I didn't have some of the add-ons that I wanted in there. Those weren't there. A couple typos in the sidebar. I didn't clearly mark that the collector's box set was an early bird at $150. It was chaos. Oh, and then on top of that, we had an old sample linked to the download sample button. So then people are going to the old sample and they're like, hey, like there's this typo here. And then like the Ryude stats are all the same, but there's clearly there's different Ryude here, but they got all the same statistics. What's going on with that? And I'm like, oh my God, okay, that's the wrong link. We're linking to an old an old sample PDF, and it was just like absolute chaos. In the meantime, while all this is happening, like I hit the go live button, and it's not like, okay, cool, life at work just calmed down and I can take my lunch break and I can just focus on this. It's like, no, I hit the go live button, then I was pulled back into my real job for like, however long. So I couldn't even get to anything very quickly because I got to go put out these fires. It's what happens when you work in the mental health space. You never really know what's going to happen day to day. So it was Kickstarter launch days are always chaotic. Even the ones that are meticulously planned are chaotic. And this one was just like extra chaos. So there's a little bit of inside baseball for you. The joys of running a Kickstarter. Okay. Let's see here. I feel really bad about messaging you about issues with SMT stuff. No, do not. Someone just said like, I didn't know LionWing wasn't your main thing. I feel bad about messaging you about issues with SMT stuff now. Do not feel bad about that. This is still my company. People are still paying money to buy product. I still have to give them those products. People have questions about their products. I owe them answers. Don't worry about that. No issues. Do not feel bad about that at all. Let's see here. Does the LionWing website require you to enter an email address when you order now? Yes, it does, because, and this happened with Tokyo Conception, with Shin Megami. We had a lot of people, I don't know how. There's always been an email box there that you could fill out. It wasn't always required, but people were buying the PDF of Shin Megami specifically and then not listing an email address. And I'm like, where am I sending this to? And Shopify, which is the platform that the LionWing website is built on, is awesome, right? It's so good at what it does, and it's so bad at what it does bad. And so like if someone places an order, and most people don't put their phone number in the order, which is fine. It's whatever. We usually don't need it except for international orders. We have to have a phone number then. Most people don't put a phone number. And then some people don't put an email address. So then someone orders a PDF, and I've got no way of A, getting it to them, and B, contacting them. I can't even be like, yo, you like, if I had a number, I'd straight text them like, hey, you order from the LionWing shop. I can't give you your thing because I got no email address on file. So there are some orders out there of people who, bought the PDF or bought the actual, the book in PDF bundle, still haven't got their PDFs because I have no way of contacting them or giving them that PDF. So now, yes, now I require email addresses. I still don't get emails about Tokyo Conception. Really, King? Did you get any of our newsletters? I'm curious. Wait, hold on, King. So wait, are you one of the ones who bought something and didn't put their email address in? It's okay if you were. All right, let me, oh boy, my nose is getting more stopped up the more I talk. Great audio, right? Let's listen to this super nasally dude talk. Sorry, guys. If I could change it, I would. Let me go through here. So, hold on, I'm just reading something on the campaign page, see if this is a question I can answer here. Okay, so a lot of people have asked, can some of the stretch goals be about supplements? Like, can we use the stretch goals to, translate and publish a supplement, or even translate and publish one of the books? I love that idea. Unfortunately, if we put that as a stretch goal, like let's say a supplement or one of the novels, for instance, then Kickstarter doesn't consider our project fulfilled until we fulfill everything that we said we were going to give folks. Translating, editing, and publishing a novel, that's not a quick thing, right? And like a lot of things can go wrong, and that can slow down the timeline of delivery. So I can't offer supplements or the novels as a stretch goal because it would create bloat for project fulfillment, timely delivery, and it would also distract us from making sure that the core rulebook is what it should be, because ultimately that's why people are showing up. That's the central thing, and then and then some people want more than that. Totally fine. So I would say, if we're gonna do more stuff within Wares Blade, like let's say I make that decision and I'm like, you know what? No, to use a phrase I used before, like the juice is worth the squeeze. We're doing this thing. We're at least going to see how like an expansion goes, or we're at least going to see how one novel sells, and like then we'll decide if we do more. So if I did one of those things, especially with like one of the expansions, because I've talked to Shindosha about this, I would probably just run another Kickstarter for it once we fulfilled this one. In fact, I would be okay, because it is sort of a risky property, even though clearly people want it. I would even be okay, running multiple Kickstarters over time. You do one, you fulfill it, you move on to the next one, just focused on Wares Blade stuff. I think that would be a fine idea. In fact, like I'm picturing a world where maybe it's a novel box set, maybe it's a 3-novel set that we put up on Kickstarter, because that's a pretty huge undertaking in terms of translation, right? Just the translation fees alone would be costly on top of publishing and all that stuff. So like that would make sense. Or I could picture a Kickstarter or a Game Found or a backer kit campaign where it's a supplement, like a much smaller, leaner campaign that isn't meant to make big money, but is meant to cover the cost of printing, printing and development. I'd be okay with that too. So, but nevertheless, that's why we're not doing any of those things as stretch goals right now. I know people want them. I want them too. I do. It doesn't make sense right now. All right, let's get back to the chat over here. So, King, yeah, if you didn't get, if you're not getting the emails and you were supposed to get the PDF and you never did, and you didn't list your email on your order for me to send it to you, drop me a DM in Discord and we can sort that shit out real quick. I don't want you to not have those things. Okay. Let's see here. Novel set would be an instant backing for me. Yeah, I do think like there was a time when novels didn't they didn't do well on Kickstarter. They didn't really perform. I've seen that shift over the past 4 years. Like I've seen novels do really well. I've seen novels, graphic novels, do quite well on Kickstarter. Whereas if you roll the clock back to 2019, let's say, those things were not typically producing all that well. So yeah, I think I loved I love the idea of a novel, novel box set, and I'm glad you would show up. Pants Bonanza. Okay. Sorry, just making some notes here. Okay. Okay, I missed a question here. A MOOC for the standees. If you're talking about the bases, are you talking about the bases? Like the base of the standee? King? While you're answering that, I can move to this next question. Do we know who the mecha artists were? They really remind me. Yes, I mean, we have a credits page. We'll have a credits page in the back of the book, like we do for all of our projects, so people will be able to, see who those folks were. And there were a lot more folks who worked on the game than I think people realized. And so I feel like a credits page in the world of localization is like so underrated. Maybe it's just like the nerd in me, or maybe it's because I'm in this industry and that's why I'm interested, or especially with old stuff, maybe it's just like the historian like bone in me. But like I love, like I want to know who worked on this stuff. Who was the person in 1989 designing Wares Blade, or writing it or illustrating it or whatever the case may be. I find that stuff fascinating. What I also find fascinating is in tracking people down. So, side note, tangent. Wares Blade is part of our Legends of Japan line, where we're going back and we're translating and publishing all these retro Japanese RPGs. One of the most enjoyable aspects of this entire initiative is getting to track down the guys who we can. Some people we can't track down because they're unreachable. They're much older. They have no social media presence, or quite frankly, they're deceased. But one of the most enjoyable aspects of this is tracking down these guys and just talking with them and like giving them another moment in the spotlight. It's such like a cool, I talked about this, I think, in one of the updates. It's like such a cool full circle moment. Like these are, like we can all think about projects that we worked on decades ago, whether it was in school or it was at a job. Some of those projects we're really proud of. And I just think to myself, like, how cool would it be if I was like a 35-year-old dude in 1989 working on an RPG, and like we release it and like, hey, it's a cool thing. Then RPGs die and I'm not doing that anymore and I kind of move on. I mean, maybe I'm a designer for other games, or maybe I get out of the business entirely and I go work a desk job or whatever, and I have like a successful career as I don't know, as a marketing person or an insurance salesman or a pilot. I don't know. And I do that. And like, that's my life for years and decades. And then I'm old and I've retired and I'm 70 or I'm 80 in some cases, who we've talked to, some of these guys. And someone knocks on the proverbial door and says, hey, remember that thing you did when you were much younger that was really cool? We want to show people that, and we want to do it on a large stage, that work on the world stage, the international stage. Would you want to be a part of that? It would require you to kind of get back into the mindset of who you were when you were 35 a little bit. It would require a lot of things from you. You know, we want to ask you questions. We want to get in your mind. We want to figure out why you did the things you did, why you designed it this way, just so that we have a good context and can produce good translation work and all that stuff. And maybe we're going to do some interviews. Maybe we're going to do like a small little interview circuit. What do you think about that? And I just think to myself, if I'm that dude, and I'm like 81, and that thing I did in 1989 feels like a lifetime ago. For me, that just feels like what a wild life moment. And that's been such one of the joys of this Legends of Japan line, is talking to these guys and seeing somewhere in there is that guy who did that thing 40 years ago. Somewhere in there, past all the other jobs and past the second or third career that this guy had after the RPG thing. That guy is still in there, and like getting access to him, even if it's just for a moment, you know, like you see it, you see the twinkle in his eye of like, there's that young man. Like that is such a freaking cool moment. So we've got, more Legends of Japan stuff coming. So, I mean, we've got book 2 coming. That's already done. That contract's finished. Development will start on that in earnest. Actually in September. That's our timeline. And we mostly have book 3 done. The ink's got to dry on that one, so to speak. But we've talked to probably, oh my gosh, 15 people, which doesn't sound like a lot, but like, you know, it's not like there were like hundreds of RPGs coming out in the 80s and 90s in Japan, right? So we've talked to a lot of the guys who have been doing things. I mean, it might be closer to 20. I don't know. Someone asked the question, what was their reaction initially? Were they excited that people wanted to play it in America? Had they seen the Kickstarter? Yeah, absolutely. I think now Shindosha is different because like they got it right away. Like they didn't require any additional explaining. I pitched it to them. I said, here's what I want to do. This is why I want Wares Blade to be the first book in this product line. Here's who I think is going to show up for this. Here's what I think it's probably going to do. I gave him a range because I didn't fully know. What do you think? And Shindosha was like, got it. And let's do it. You know, I mean, there was more to it than that. But that was the sentiment of like, they just understood. Some of the guys, however, haven't understood its appeal and have needed to be pitched a little bit harder. And we had to sell it a lot more. Check this. This is crazy. So there's this one designer, and I think this is probably going to become an actual product of ours. So I'm not going to talk about it. If it was like if the deal never came through and it was dead, I would maybe disclose it now. But I think the deal is actually back on the table, and I think we're going to do something. There's this designer who, we had to send a letter to him in the mail. The only way that we could get in contact with this guy was like, we found his address. We got his address through a designer who knew a designer who knew a designer who knew a designer who knew this guy. All these designers that we went through weren't current designers. These were also older gentlemen. So we were trying to get to this one guy, and we had to go through like this whole rotation of other designers from the 70s, 80s, and 90s just to get to this guy, only for the guy who knows him to say like, oh, I only have his address. So we sent him this letter, and he sends it back to my liaison and with a phone number. It's like a phone number, like no other context in the letter. Not like, hey, thanks for writing this to me. Sounds like a pretty cool idea. I don't know about it, but hey, maybe we can have a conversation and we'll talk about it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. If it does work, no, just a just a phone number. Um, so then we're calling this guy. We're calling this dude on the phone. Um, it's like it's 1 a.m. or it's like 1:30 a.m. on like a Tuesday night for me a couple years ago. We're talking to this guy over the phone, and like it's a landline that he's talking on. It's like, what universe am I in right now? Like, this is a like, on one hand, it's like, this is amazing. This is like so cool. Like, this is wild. But on the other hand, it's like, is this really happening right now? But anyways, so Shindosha was into it immediately. They got it. A lot of the people have been like, they get it pretty quickly. Um, Installment Tuned Legends of Japan, they got it, but there are lots of like rights issues, and that's something that we've run into a lot. Is who owns the rights to these things? Who owns the rights to this thing that came out in 1983 in this magazine? Not even a fucking retail release. It's from a magazine. How do we get to this guy? We want that game. We want the magazine game. We got to talk to the magazine game guy. How do we find him? So the second one in Legends of Japan, they were into it, but then like it was all this right stuff, lots of back and forth. Um, it took longer to lock down than pretty much any other product, just because like people just didn't know who to talk to, and like who might know who owns the rights to this. So it's a lot of that, a lot of hoops to jump through for this product line, but it's totally worth it because then we have a Kickstarter like this, and you're like, oh shit, that validates all the hard work. Are we still going to get an August update about SMT? So newsletter issue 5 is almost done. I have one more article to write for it. It's actually, I got to write the Wares Blade part of the newsletter, and then I'm sending it out. So my plan was to send it out in August. I don't know if I'm going to have time to send it out by the 31st, which is in 3 days. And I don't want to send out a newsletter on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday anyway. No one's reading those things then. So what will probably happen now, next week is a holiday here in the States. I might send it out next week or the week after that. It will be coming in September, and I can guarantee that just because I'm basically done with it. I mean, even the images are all laid in there. And usually that's what takes the longest for the newsletter, is just getting all the blocking and imaging right. But even that's done. I literally just have to write the Wares Blade part. So yeah, that's still coming. Good. So good news coming. Only good news coming to SMT. In our main newsletter, it was good and bad news. Mostly bad, let's be honest. This one's all good news. I know people have had frustrations about that timeline. They've had frustrations about the communication around that product. I know there's been some frustration around, there's been legitimate outside of my control issues that clearly have gotten in the way of this, logistics and tariffs and printing issues and whatnot. But then there are issues that I have to own, and that's not keeping people up to date as much as possible. Because if you've been following me for a long time, I do not like to update people until I have a full story, because I used to do that. I used to update people sort of in real time without having all the data, and it only came back to bite me in the ass. And so finally, after Gun and Gun, that was one of our projects that we did on Kickstarter, I was like, fuck, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, my communication will just have to be slow if it means that when I finally talk to people, I'm giving them all the information, I'm giving them all the data, it's all accurate. I don't have to go back and then like go back on my word and say, actually, I had this wrong. That just creates confusion. It creates frustration. And usually if you're having to do that, it's already about something that's creating frustration anyway, because it's usually about a delay, and people don't like delays. So I got to own that I've been slow on that. We laid out a roadmap, last year about the things that we were going to do in anticipation for the release. All of that stuff got delayed. I didn't talk about that overtly, and that was probably my own failing. I think I assumed people knew that it was going to be delayed because the whole book was delayed, but that was a stupid thing on my part. I should know better than anyone. I've been doing this a long time. You don't assume knowledge of anyone. So I know people are frustrated there. So what we've got coming with SMT in the newsletter, We've got news on the White Vortex. We got news on the Rhino sample character. We got news on the print run wrapping up. We got news on when we expect to be freighted. Is there anything else? I got some news on finally episode 3 of the official episode 3 of 3, so it's the last one of the official actual play podcast, actual play stream video. Is that it? Is that everything? I think that's everything. Yeah, so it's a lot of the stuff that people have been waiting for, quite frankly. And I got all my ducks in a row, which means I'm ready to talk about it. I do have a rough launch for the physical book now. So, yay. That's fun. All right. King, you asked if I add stuff on the Kickstarter, does it ship when the Kickstarter ends or when SB is ready? So excuse me. We've done it both ways. It's quite frankly, it's easier just to ship everything at once. It saves you on shipping because if not, I got to piecemeal it out, which just costs you more shipping. And right now, like no one needs any more shipping costs added to their shipping costs. It makes it easier on me, you know, because then I don't have to like lose a book somewhere in there. Like, oh shit, did I send these with the first shipment or not? You know, and then someone doesn't get their book, and then I got to pay out of pocket to ship them that book, and that's not good for me. And so it's simply easier just to ship it all at once. I'll probably do that again just to save everyone the headache, though I know that's not as glamorous because that means you got to wait for those other books. But I'm not totally sold on that. So I'd say the jury's out on that. If you're like, you know what, I don't even want to wait to know what the ultimate decision's gonna be there, you just go to the LionWing website, grab all the stuff. It's all the same price. There was Alandar. Yeah, that's the roadmap that I was talking about. So there was that roadmap that got blown up and not talked about. And in my mind, it was talked about. In my mind, I said, oh, I'm pushing this, and we're going to revisit this when the physical books. And I bet everyone knows that, so I don't need to say anything about it. But that was a stupid thing to assume. So that shit's on me. That's the roadmap that I'm talking about, though. So I'm going to be revisiting that roadmap. Because I was, we did a lot of legwork for that roadmap to figure out what we were going to offer, and when we were going to offer it. A lot of this, like I know, like people wanted the White Vortex early on, and I've said for a while, like the White Vortex was going to release slightly ahead of the physical books, and so some of this stuff has been delayed, like the White Vortex, which has been done for a long time. Quite frankly, to coincide with the release, to try to build some hype, like when you've got a delay or 2 delays that hit and you're basically releasing a year after you're supposed to release, like, you lose momentum, you lose hype. So how do you begin to rebuild that? Well, you offer product that people haven't seen yet. And yes, no one's seen the physical books yet, right? But people have seen the PDFs. And yes, getting a physical book is very different than reading a book on a screen. Because, like, I'm not a PDF guy. Like, I offer all these PDFs. I don't fucking read PDFs. I hate them. So I totally understand, like, physical book is different, and that in and of itself will build hype. However, also, I want there to be more to it than that. Because a lot of people have probably felt like, oh, yeah, I've seen this book. I'm finally getting it in my hands. I'm finally going to run a game. But I want there to be new things that people are getting for the first time. And so I've held stuff in reserve to be able to coincide with, with that. And I haven't talked about it yet because I haven't talked about a release date yet. Now, the smart thing to do, and sometimes I'm not smart, is telling people, hey, I'm going to revisit this. Here's why I'm holding it. Here's when I'm going to revisit it and why I'm going to revisit it at that time. Thanks for your patience. And I just didn't do that. And that shit's on me. So I apologize. Jake, I've started moving my PDFs onto a smaller device to read from if I don't have a book. You know what I like? I like this growing trend of like audio narrators for RPG books. Like, I don't know why this took so long. Of course, I didn't think of it, so I'm the reason why it took so long. Part of it, anyway. That I can get down with, you know, because like I spend a lot of time commuting in my car. My work's like, you know, it's a drive, and so I listen to a ton of podcasts. I love the idea of having Tokyo Conception or Wares Blade having an audio component, you know, so you can just listen. You can listen to the book. You can listen to the rules while you're driving, or you're on the train, you're on the bus, you know, you're on a plane, whatever. Let's see here. For the standees, are they just Ryude or does it include other creatures and humans? Just Ryude for right now. So we're doing something a little different with these standees. So we've done standee sets a couple different times. Embryo Machine, which is another mecha game, which we're finally sold out on. You can no longer buy that game. We got 0 copies. I actually think we're -1. I think someone ordered a copy and and I don't know why Shopify didn't alert me, but it pushed the order through and I was like, we don't have this. I had to go back to the person and be like, we don't got this. I'm sorry, I got to refund you. That game had standees. And then we've done some other standees for like Midnight Saga. And we did one for Testament. The difference with these standees, I want to do something a little different, is I wanted the bases. So like, okay, so I play a lot of Warhammer. I play a lot of Lord of the Rings tabletop. Part of why I like miniatures games, playing them anyway, is why I like to magnetize everything, is I like to be able to change the base of my character so that it matches whatever terrain the scenario calls for. So I knew for Wares Blade, I wasn't going to do miniatures. I'm not interested in getting into the miniatures game. I do like standees though. Quite frankly, like I think I feel like just standees are. I'm not going to say that. People will kill me over. I was going to say I like standees more than miniatures. I think they're better than miniatures. I know a bunch of people, you know, kill me. And this is coming from a guy who plays a miniatures game, right? Sometimes I just wish I had like Warhammer characters and standees. Anyway, so I wanted to kind of replicate that feeling with Wares Blade. So I have all these renders done. Now someone in the comment section of the Kickstarter has made me rethink this. But I was going to offer a stretch goal for folks who are getting the standees that have different bases on it. So like right now, the standard standee for Wares Blade will come with the Ryude, and then will come with like a blasted earth type standee. It'll be acrylic still, but it's going to be standing on some kind of like blasted charred earth, because you know that's a lot of the setting here. But I wanted to be able to offer for those as a stretch goal, like more free stands that had different terrains on them, so you could kind of swap them out, you know. So you have like a grassy terrain, you have snow terrain, you have sand terrain, whatever. I was like, I love this. Like, I would want this for myself. I rendered all of this, and then you know we offered a stretch goal. I think it was the dice bag, and you know, someone had an issue with offering the dice bag for only people who get the dice, because they're like, well, it says in the sidebar that people get all unlocked stretch goals, and that's totally right. You know, I just kind of assumed, you know, that it would be implied like, well, yeah, unless there's a stretch goal that doesn't apply to the thing you got. There's me assuming again. And he was, he was nice about it. I had no problem with it. But it has made me rethink, like, maybe I won't offer those, because like if I offer a stretch goal that's only for people who get the standees, people will think I'm trying to like upsell them on the collector's box. So, and just for the record, like I've been doing this a long time, and if you've been following me, you probably know this about me. Like when I offer stretch goals, it's only like a dice bag for people who get the dice. It's not to push people to get the dice. I don't care about that. Like an extra $15, I don't need that from you. Like if you want to hold on to that and you don't want that, that's totally cool. What I do want to do is I want to reward people who spent the extra money, and I want to give them something for free. And so that's what it's not. It's not about like, oh, let me be slimy and try to like squeeze money out of people. It's like, no, I just want to reward the people who decided to give me more of their hard-earned money. Money's not growing on trees these days, I've heard. So like the fact that like anyone wants to part with their money over anything, and they want to part with that money for a product that I'm pushing out, like that's awesome. That's why we have stretch goals in general. It's like, let's keep making this shit really awesome for all of you guys. But also, if you're gonna get the dice, like I'm gonna hook you up with something, because like you didn't need to spend that money and you did. Thank you. Here's a free dice bag. Someone said, King said, I'm coming around on standees. I hated them for a long time. Yeah, I think if I rolled back the calendar like 10 years, when I really started getting in the Warhammer, I think I probably like looked down my nose at standees. Now I'm like, bring them on. Give me the cool standees. Make sure they're double-sided, please. Okay. Where's audio drama seconded? So I don't know if it'd be an audio drama. I was thinking more just like the core rulebook narrated. But there are those audio dramas. Now that's an arena I know nothing about. Audio dramas. I'm sure I'm missing stuff here, guys. Sorry. But then has the issue of needing more goals overall. Indeed. I only like minis if I have them painted, but color standees is all done for you, and I really like that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm right there with you. Like I'll do that for my Warhammer figures, but like other games that have miniatures, I'm always just like, I don't have time to do this. Like, I barely wanted to paint the figures of the game that I love, and so that means like I definitely don't want to paint the figures of the game that I just kind of like, and like after a while it's like, what do you do with all these where do you put all these pieces of plastic, these big bulky pieces of plastic? Which is why I like standees. They're a little more ergonomic and designed, take up less of my space. Okay. Boy, it's 11 o'clock. I've been at this for 2 hours. I think we're probably coming to the end, folks. I thank you so much for hanging in there with me over this past 2 hours. Hopefully you got your questions answered. If I missed one, I'm sorry. You can throw it in the chat real quick before we wrap up here. Time, just like money, is not in infinite supply, and you all chose to spend your time with me tonight, which I greatly appreciate. Thank you so much. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. Hopefully my nose wasn't stuffed up too much. Hopefully I wasn't nasally too much. Hopefully I wasn't too much of anything that you don't want to be too much of tonight, and I was too much of the stuff that you want to be too much at. I got contacts with Sound Cadence Studios. I wonder if they could do audio drama stuff. I am always down for being networked with other people. Send me connections. Oh, Noel, that's you. Hey, I didn't even see you were in the chat. Any chance of bundling the original Japanese versions as PDFs? So we don't have the rights. We don't have the rights to the Japanese version. Only the English rights. If that's what you mean. If that's what you meant, that is the answer. Personally make tokens for games I play, fun for arts and crafts. Absolutely. Yep. Tokens, underrated. Underrated. Will the GM screen be made of hard cardboard or plastic? Hard cardboard. For the only reason being that that's what I like. Like, like thick cardboard. And would you be able to let us know what will be on it? So, I mean, kind of like the standard, like quick reference stuff that a Wares maker, which is what the GM is called here in Wares Blade, will need to know. Stats tables, quick reference rules, that kind of thing. Okay, thanks for the AMA. Yeah, it's the first LionWing project I've really tracked, and so things you've said here tonight make me know that this game is in good hands. Hey, so like honestly, it's always a compliment when people return, right? Because that means like you did something right the last time they bought one of your products, so much so that they want to buy another one. It's also a huge compliment when someone checks us out for the first time. They're like, this is the one that I want to spend my money on from you for the first time. I think we had some people in the comments section actually today say, 2 people, coincidentally enough, say like, hey, this is my first time ever back to Kickstarter and it's Wares Blade. And like that shit warms my heart. So I'm glad that you found us, Pants, and I'm glad you found us through Wares Blade. That's a good first one to come in on. It sets the bar pretty high though, you know? Okay. Well, folks, that's the end. I will see you in the Discord, or I'll see you in the comments section. I'll see you on the update. And thanks so much for supporting the project. Thanks so much for your enthusiasm of the project. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight to talk about the project. And thanks for spreading the word. Honestly, like if I could ask of you all one thing, and I have, you know, I have no right to ask you for anything. It is to tell one person about Wares Blade. That's it. Just one person. Doesn't matter who it is. Friend, family, someone online, someone you work with, someone you're in class with, whatever the case may be. Just one person. It's amazing the splintering effect that has if one person just tells one person, right? Because then that one person tells another one person. Or maybe that one person tells 2 people. And those 2 people tell 1 people each. You know, like such a splintering effect that can be really powerful, especially with something like this. I digress. Thank you again. You guys are the best. Seriously, the best. I'll see you around. Take care. Bye now.